Alright, what's up everyone? I'm Filoki, and today I have come back from my 2-week hiatus from doing nothing because I am a stupid, and today we're going to be talking about Odell Beckham Jr., the poo-poo eater himself, the Dookie Diddler. Odell Beckham Jr. has been released by the Cleveland Browns. Now, don't even get me started on this Odell Beckham Jr. situation. I have no idea what's going on. His dad posted highlight videos of him being open and then not getting passed to, and he was talking trash on Baker, and then the Browns said, "Hey, don't come to practice, buddy," twice, and then they cut him. It seems like the Browns are really coddling Baker Mayfield because you watch those highlights of Beckham Jr.'s dad posted. That's kind of on Baker Mayfield. There's a couple really wide open ones, and if you're a good quarterback, you'll see that. But I'm not here to talk about Baker Mayfield, even though I don't believe he's that good. We're talking about Odell Beckham Jr. He could possibly come to the Seattle Seahawks because the Seattle Seahawks have the money, have the cap space to take on his contract, because I believe now that he's been cut, if he were to be claimed off the waiver wire, he would have to be paid out the rest of his $8 million for this year. So the Seattle Seahawks with $13 million, we could pay $8 million. But do we want to? That's the real question. Now, Odell Beckham Jr., a lot of people see him as a drama queen, and by God, is he a drama queen. But he has been thrust in some pretty bad situations throughout his career. Early on with the Giants, he had to play with old Eli Manning. He didn't really have the luck of the draw coming in as a rookie. With the Browns, he had to play with butt-cheek Baker Mayfield. Baker Mayfield, the Browns do pretty well, but I don't think it's on Baker Mayfield. Baker Mayfield, he'd be missing throws. He just don't be throwing to open people sometimes. And the Browns, they rely a lot on their run game and their really good offensive line. So I don't really think Baker Mayfield is a driving force for that team being good. And Odell Beckham kind of proved that, Baker isn't terrible, but by God, is he not as good as someone like Russell Wilson. So let's talk about the Seahawks situation. Russell Wilson probably going to be coming back week 10 because he's about 10 steps ahead of every single timetable or every single little, marker that he has to hit for his recovery. And if he does come back week 10, this would be I guess you could say, perfect situation, perfect time to get Odell Beckham Jr. because, you get him from the waivers within the next few days. Then you have an entire week of him practicing with you. And, of course, he's a really good wide receiver. Even if he doesn't know the entirety of the offense, you can kind of throw him in and get something done. But here's where I have a bit of a dilemma. The Seattle Seahawks used a second-round pick on Dwayne Eskridge. Now, let's not even get started on the fact that Creed Humphrey was there, who is looking like a Pro Bowler right now at center, our biggest position of need. Let's not talk about that. It's okay. But Odell Beckham Jr. is a wide receiver. Dwayne Eskridge is a wide receiver. We passed on probably one of the best center prospects in the last few years to get a wide receiver in the second round. So do we want to get Odell Beckham Jr. and just throw Dwayne Eskridge out the window? I don't know. That's the thing. When it comes to having the most talented players on the roster, I would love to have Odell Beckham Jr. But when it comes to being depressed because the Seattle Seahawks cannot draft to save their life, I don't really want to see Dwayne Eskridge just not play after we didn't get Creed Humphrey with that pick. So I'm kind of in a weird dilemma here. Now, I think Odell Beckham Jr. would be a great guy to pick up because I don't think he'll be a drama queen. The Seattle Seahawks are pretty good at, containing people's character and letting them be themselves without letting them go completely overboard. But, I don't know. I don't think Odell Beckham would be a bad option. I just am wildly upset still, months and months after it happened, that we didn't take Creed Humphrey with our second-round pick. And, Odell Beckham Jr., we could sign him. I think we'd be the highest team on the waiver wire that can afford him, that could reasonably get him, because I think there are teams that could afford him cap space wise, but they're horrible. The Seahawks. I'm not going to say the Seahawks are really good, but if Russell Wilson's coming back to the Seahawks, Odell Beckham could look at them and be like, yeah, they could do something, and I could help them out. But we'll have to see what happens, because I don't want to get my hopes up saying that we're going to get Odell Beckham Jr. because are we really going to get Odell Beckham Jr.? I mean, the Seattle Seahawks don't like going for the big names that could actually help us, like a guy like Creed Humphrey or, something interesting like that. Man, it's kind of depressing. But we'll just have to see what happens. Odell Beckham Jr., I think it'd be fun to pick him up. I like Odell Beckham Jr., even though he has been a bit of a drama queen. He's a cool guy. He's a fun guy. And there's actually a report that Mike Florio said that the Seahawks, the Saints, and the 49ers are the team to watch, and the Seattle Seahawks are kind of favorites to get Odell Beckham Jr. So we'll just have to see what this situation entails. I'm not going to be opposed to getting Odell Beckham Jr., but if we do get Odell Beckham Jr. and Dwayne Eskridge just doesn't play for the rest of the season, it would be quite disappointing, especially watching Creed Humphrey become a Pro Bowler in his first year. But, you know, when it just comes to Odell Beckham Jr., not talking about the whole drafting situation with the Seahawks, I think it'd be a good signing. We have $13 million. We don't really have anything to use it on. We didn't make any trades at the deadline. And Odell Beckham Jr., obviously he's talented. And he hasn't had the greatest of quarterback luck. Maybe a Russell Wilson, Odell Beckham Jr. with DK Metcalf and Tyler Lockett would be absolutely disgusting. It's just the matter of us actually doing it. Because, you know, if I were, you know, that GM of the Seahawks, or if I was in the situation of Pete Carroll where he kind of has all the power over drafting, I would have taken Creed Humphrey. I would maybe get Odell Beckham Jr. here, but, you know, the Seahawks don't really do the obvious good pick. The Seahawks will probably see Odell Beckham Jr. there and be like, oh my God, let's go get Henry Ruggs, who just murdered a woman. Like, I don't know. The Seahawks are dumb. I don't really expect us to do anything with this. If we do sign Odell Beckham Jr., I'll honestly be surprised, but I will be happily surprised because, you know, I think it'd be cool. I just don't really expect the Seahawks to make the right move because so many times in history we have not made the right move. You know, LJ Collier, goodbye first-round pick. Dwayne Eskridge, goodbye Creed Humphrey. Could have really solved some problems here. Maybe if we had Creed Humphrey, Russell Wilson wouldn't have got hurt because we would have had a good blocker at center. Now, I'm done talking about this, man, because I'm not even talking about Odell Beckham Jr. I'm just mad at our drafts, and that's something for another video, for another time. Odell Beckham Jr., let me know down below what your thoughts are on if we should sign him or not. I think we should. I think we won't because the Seahawks are dumb. But we'll see what happens. Let me know what you think. Like I said, subscribe if you're new. Leave a like if you enjoyed, man. I don't know. Have a good day.